Storm is easily one of the most powerful, capable, and dangerous characters in the entire Marvel universe. But you might not be able to tell this if you've only encountered Storm in one of the cartoons, or God help you, the live action movies. It seems like every time you turn around, they're constantly nerfing our favorite Weather Witch. I just have to make this video as a die-hard, lifelong Storm fan, and I feel like the Storm fan base is constantly in a state of disappointment with how much she's constantly being nerfed. They either limit her powers to a couple elements like lightning and wind, or they just severely downplay just what she is capable of. And I feel y'all. I would love to see Storm just for once outside of the comics go all in. Be her unrestricted self. However, after consuming Storm in various forms of media for over 30 years, I've come to the conclusion that we will likely never see Storm in her full regal goddess glory outside of a few choice comic book pages. And I'm going to explain why. Let's first look at exactly what Storm can do. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, right? She has control over the weather. Duh. So she can make some tornadoes, hurricanes, lightning storms, maybe a tsunami here and there, some fog, and her power set just from this alone has lots of applications both in and out of combat. The list really goes on and on and on. But this just barely scratches the surface of what Storm is capable of. And again, if you've only or primarily experienced Storm outside of the comics, it makes sense that this is where your mind comes to when someone brings up what Storm is capable of. But, oh dear friends, if you will, please join me on a little journey as to just what our Ororo can really do. The Center for Science Education website defines weather as the mix of events that happen each day in our atmosphere. Now, what is the atmosphere? Gas, heat, temperature, ultraviolet radiation. All of these things make up an atmosphere, and all of these things determine what the condition of the weather is like at any given point and any given spot on the planet. So what does all that mean? I've gotten nice and nerdy Bill Science style with you guys, but what does all that actually mean? Well, being that Storm's power is the ability to influence and manipulate weather and atmosphere at will, everything I just mentioned falls underneath Storm's domain. This can be anything as big as a storm that covers the entire planet and reshapes its surface, and something as small as the air pressure inside your lungs. She can manipulate things on a macro and micro level. This is not limited to Earth. That means if she's fighting on another planet, her powers still work. If she's fighting in space, her powers still work. If she's fighting in another dimension, her powers still work. To better put this in perspective, let's step off of Earth for a second and hop over to our big buddy Jupiter. Jupiter is the 5th planet in our solar system and the biggest planet in our solar system. It's also had a raging storm on it that is actually visible from space, appearing as this giant red spot. And this is Earth. That storm, which itself is larger than the entire orb of Earth, would be under Storm's control. She could calm it down, she could make it rage harder. Side note, this is the main reason why Storm is the way she is in regards to emotional control. She understands that she needs to be in control at all times. If she lets loose and goes off, she could summon a storm which will claim the life of everyone on planet Earth and render it uninhabitable. This is something that I don't think has ever been properly demonstrated in any of the cartoons, movies, or video games. They may be referenced or hinted at, but they have not been shown. And I've been waiting for years for Storm to finally have her moment and just exist as the awesome weather goddess that she is. But I don't think we're gonna get it. Storm is literally broken. If she were a video game character in a MOBA, she would be top picked, top banned every single match, okay? If you pick her, you win. If the enemy team picks her, you lose. That is the level of power that Storm has. And this has been shown in the comic books several times, including but not limited to creating tsunamis, stopping tsunamis, breathing in outer space by pulling in spare oxygen and hydrogen atoms that were just laying around, surviving strikes from her own lightning, which is hotter than the surface of the sun, riding on solar winds, aka wind that's generated from the violent expulsion of energy from the sun. and the ability to manipulate a person's electrical brain power and the air in their lungs.
Sheesh.
It's not unlike Superman, how Superman could just save everyone and stop everyone on his own. But it takes a good writer who understands the character's strengths and weaknesses to be able to put him into positions that are interesting, to make him struggle, make him fail sometimes, but in a way that makes sense. And when you sit down and think about it, it actually makes sense why claustrophobia is her Achilles heel. The in-universe reason makes sense. The fact that she was trapped under the rubble of her own home amongst her parents' dead bodies after a plane crashed into her house when she was 6 years old, that perfectly makes sense for why claustrophobia is such a big thing for her. But it gets even deeper than that. Let's take it back to the definition of weather and atmosphere. Any place that has open space has an atmosphere. So as long as Storm has the ability to breathe and think, if she is in a location, she can have control over the weather and atmosphere of said location. So really, the only way to completely nerf her is to remove the ability for her to have control over the space that she's in, putting her in a very, very tightly closed space, somewhere where she can't move and has no influence over what is around her. It may not be a literal restriction of her powers, but psychologically, mentally, it takes her to a place where she does not have control because there's no space. There's nothing for her to do, nothing to use. She's just there in that tightly enclosed space. And I think that triggers something in her psychology that speaks to her both on a mutant power level and from a personality level even. She's also someone who loves nature. She loves being able to be free. What's the biggest way to constrict that? Force her into a place without movement. All of this is connected in my mind. Now to reiterate my previous point, a good writer will write her in such a way where she will be challenged, but she can still overcome. And this is where a lot of writers in the comic books get to stretch their creative legs and flex their creative muscles. In the hands of a good writer, Storm can be as powerful or as complex as she needs to be, and it won't take away from any of the spotlight of the other characters. But that caliber of writer, at least when it comes to the X-Men, you're hard pressed to find them outside of the comics. And if you doubt what I'm saying, just look at the movies. Yes, literally, look at the movies. I know you don't want to, but you need to. It's going to help me prove my point. In those movies, even in the better movies where she's actually featured, is either severely underwhelming or slightly less underwhelming, but still underwhelming. Strangely, X3 is an example of this. I feel like one of the worst X-Men movies gave us the best live-action Storm. It's the only one where she's portrayed by Halle Berry in a way that you can actually see being in a leadership position. You can see her maternal side, you can see her stern side, you can see her commanding side, you can see her be a team player. And we get to see her actually get involved in these fights and do more than just summon the occasional support tornado or lightning bolt. She's actually down there in the mix, fighting with the team just as she should be. But even that was weak sauce compared to half the stuff we've talked about in this video alone, which only barely scratches the surface of what Storm is actually capable of. And every other time, it's just, oh yeah, I'm over here. I'm pretty. Oh, we're flying away. You need some tornadoes? Bam, gotcha. She's fared much better in the cartoons, where she's characterized much better to say the least. And she does get to do more powers-wise, still not even coming close to what she does in the comics. She's a character who is very complex and powerful, and that tends to be a humongous challenge for writers. But maybe I'm being a little too hard on the writers, so let's acknowledge a few facts about the whole comics to live action or cartoon adaptation thing. Comic books don't have anywhere near the budgetary restraints of live action or cartoons. They also don't have to worry about the natural passage of time. You're really only limited to the page and panel margins. Outside of that, you can really do whatever you want. You can do things visually that cannot be done in other mediums. So when it comes to showing some of these powers, the comics may have an advantage. Would it be cool to see in movies? Absolutely. But do we really trust them to get it right? I would much rather have a comic book full of beautifully rendered art drawn with care than to have a big name movie studio take a $500 million bloated ass budget and flush it down the drain and then give us something that doesn't even look good. But before we just jump into a Storm solo movie or TV show, I would like to see what she's capable of in a new modern iteration of her in the cartoons or in the movies. I would love to see a good writer who actually does their homework to understand all these characters, including Storm, and then gives us a version of them that does the source material justice, but is willing to take some risks. I would love to see that. But that's gonna take time. I mean, we haven't even had a proper introduction to the X-Men into the MCU, and with the way the MCU is currently shaping up, I don't know if we're gonna get it anytime soon. And until that day comes, I'm okay with getting my souped up Storm fix from the pages of comics, where she's not confined to run times, budgets, or any of that madness. She is free, just as she should always be. How do you feel about how Storm has been adapted outside of the comic books? Are you tired of seeing her constantly be nerfed? Either way, let's have us a conversation. Make sure you subscribe and like the video for more Storm content. This is Storm Corey HQ, your one-stop shop for all things Storm and Starfire. And I'll catch y'all later.